We're going to switch over to Ohio, joined by the senior editor of Veterans Today, Mr. Gordon Duff. Thank you so much for being with us, Mr. Duff. Mr. Duff, how do you see the overall significance of these meetings being held, of this meeting being held in Istanbul?
I can't help but at times look at the theatricality of the entire crisis. On our staff, Clinton Baston of the Department of Energy, a senior nuclear weapons designer, had written a week ago about the absolute impossibility of Iran ever enriching uranium to weapons grade. Explained that the inspectors that were sent to Iran were utterly unqualified. He has 43 years as a nuclear weapons designer. Knows all of the individuals involved. We're very involved in this process. We have on our staff many of our own retired nuclear weapons specialists from our military, and all of them agree that this entire crisis has been manufactured and there's no reality behind it. That it's an opportunity for people to begin speaking to each other is fine. But the issue, I think, is a political one to attack Iran, to manipulate fuel prices, especially within the U.S. and Europe. And there is no rationality behind the nuclear claims of the West whatsoever by anyone that has the least education in physics whatsoever. These people are, we're told, they're totally ignorant, and the would-be scientists are utterly unqualified, and we're willing to challenge them personally.
Well, you said, you talked about this being political in nature, and also you alluded to the crisis, the fuel crisis right now in Europe. Let's look at that. How likely then is it, because of the situation that is going on in Europe, that perhaps those involved will look at this situation perhaps differently than they did a year ago? If the countries themselves involved also look at their own interests and the reality on the ground, isn't it more likely that there's a possibility that perhaps there can be some progress in these talks?
Well, it would be good to see progress, but the rationale has to be a regional progress, that the only real replacement for the enmity that's going on would be a regional trade zone that expanded all the way from India through Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, and Turkey, that would create a regional economy. Those developments are going through as we speak. The U.S. is trying to leave Afghanistan, an utterly hopeless war. Afghanistan needs to be stabilized by having stable neighbors around her, and Pakistan is far from stable. Frankly, Iran is going to have to be a stabilizing influence, and in order to do that, we're going to have to undo a couple of decades of hostility that we need to put behind us, that all of us need to put behind us, with the exception that Israel seems to be wanting to drive the world to a world war. And, of course, there is the double standard that they are being allowed to have nuclear weapons, have them openly, threaten people with them. And Iran, that has no program at all, is being threatened with war. It's not that all of us don't notice this. It's that so many of us are noticing it now. And that story no longer works.
Well, you're saying the story no longer works. What does that mean exactly? Do you think that these Western countries, that we're reaching a point soon that they will be separating themselves from the interests of the Israelis and looking more at the interests of Washington, of London, of Paris? Are we close to that?
Here we have a duality in the United States. We have Congress that is very beholden to an Israeli lobby that donates millions of dollars to their election, and yet we have a President of the United States and a Chairman of our Joint Chiefs of Staff that are openly opposed to the Kudist rule in Israel, that are distancing themselves increasingly from Israel, that are under continual attack. If one wonders why, and here this is domestic news, but we have continual attacks against President Obama, and they are orchestrated by Israeli citizens living in the U.S., billionaires who are spending their fortunes to try to unseat President Obama. And frankly, there is no candidate that's thus far running against him.
Okay, well, we thank you for being with us. Mr. Gordon Duff, Senior Editor, Veterans Today from Ohio.